రాష్ట్రంలో ప్రతిభ చూపిన సివిల్ సర్వెంట్లకు మొదటిసారిగా ఎక్సలెన్సీ అవార్డులు అందజేస్తోంది తెలంగాణ సర్కార్. మరి చెన్నారెడ్డి మానవ వనరుల అభివృద్ధి సంస్థలో ఏర్పాటు చేసిన కార్యక్రమానికి డిప్యూటీ సీఎం కడియం శ్రీహరి, మంత్రి KTR హాజరయ్యారు. ప్రస్తుతం లైవ్లో చూద్దాం.
Expand on what happens like you. Our jobs are not permanent, let me put it that way. No legislator in this country, even if he is the Prime Minister, can take it for granted that his position is permanent. There are no permanent legislators in this country. Nobody is chosen beyond 5 years. There is a permanent house, Rajya Sabha, which is whose permanency, of course, is not because of its members, but because of the process that is built around it. Whereas in the case of bureaucrats, I mean, whatever I say, please take it with a pinch of salt, because I purely say it from my perspective, from whatever limited understanding of things I have. So you don't have to completely, take it at face value. Let me put it that way. In my limited understanding of things, bureaucracy today does not have such a predicament. You have your ACRs, you have your transfers, you have your postings, you have your preferred jobs versus not so preferred jobs, etc. And there is obviously a lot of disillusionment, resentment, sometimes dissatisfaction because of certain decisions taken, because you might believe that there is no subjectivity to the decisions, etc. Fact of the matter is, again, the perceived notion is that the political class, the political setup has all the power in democracy. The reality is, in the last 4 years I've realized, it is definitely shared. I don't think any minister, any chief minister can work or can actually move a lot of things at the speed at which we want to, of course, unless bureaucracy completely endorses and supports us. Now you also have to get the political perspective from another angle. A lot of times you may feel that we are rushing you into taking decisions. A lot of times you may feel the pressure of a minister calling you over and over, or of a minister pushing you in WhatsApp messages, asking you to get certain things done by a certain date. You have to understand the reason why. The reason why is because every government in India is elected for 5 years. Now the first year typically, I've said this before and I'll continue to say it for a while, because we don't have, unfortunately, like you gentlemen sitting there and you ladies sitting there, we don't have a foundation course when we join, government. So the first year typically goes in understanding the nature of the job. For example, when I became a legislator in 2009, I was not sure as to what, they gave me a manual, of course. As soon as I walked into the assembly, they gave me a manual and a bunch of other things which I never read. I think 99% of us don't read unless there's somebody as diligent as Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, who's very, very particular, I must tell you. I've never read them. Same is the case after I became a minister. Nobody really gave me a manual and said, this is what you have to do and this is what you should not do. So what happens is, when you get elected for the first time, the first year goes away in trying to understand your job, in trying to understand the limitations, in trying to realize and assess what you can do versus what you cannot do. And the last year, as you obviously know, goes away in fighting another election. So essentially, we are left with, the political class is left with 3 years to deliver. Now in our country, if we have to deliver the goods in 3 years, you have to understand why you see a certain sense of urgency from the political leadership. Because if you have to deliver, then you have to build processes, you have to make amendments to legislations, and you have to get things going, and you have to deliver on time so that you can showcase your work to the people. Because very often in politics, very often in our country, many political parties and many political dispensations, their focus is on next election, not next generation. Unfortunate, but true. But that is the reality of politics. Now I have to get elected again if I have to do some good. If I have to continue to do the good work that we have started, we have to get elected again. So therefore you will see a lot of requests coming in, therefore you will see a lot of pressure being built up, therefore you will see a lot of deadlines being imposed, a lot of accountability being sought, which I think in my mind is not unfair. Because very often we have heard from the political class of this country, be the Prime Minister or the Chief Minister, a particular slogan that resonates with me. Our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, and our Honorable Chief Minister, Shri K. Chandrasekhar Rao, have often repeated, minimum government, maximum governance. What does that mean? Is it an empty, hollow slogan, or does it actually have a backing, a basis, and a resonance with people? I've had the good fortune of being educated in the West. I went to a school in New York City. I also have a postgraduate degree in biotechnology here in India. When I've lived in the United States, I've also had the privilege of not just going to school, but also working there for some time, for a very limited time. I lived there for about 8 long years, 2 years in school and then almost 6.5 years of working in a private sector there. In the 8 years I lived in the United States, I've only had to meet, or I've only had to visit a government office once in 8 years. And I worked, I've been educated there, I've paid my bills, I've paid my taxes, I did everything the government wanted me to do in the United States as a law-abiding citizen. I've never broken law there. Maybe I've gotten a speeding ticket, but beyond that, I've never broken law there. What is the point I'm trying to make? The point is, I've only had to go to a government office once. And why was that? That was to get my driver's license. The director of motor vehicles, as they're called, DMV, I've had to go to the office because there's no choice of sitting at home and getting a paper signed and getting your license without taking a driving license test. Other than that, I've never had to experience or first-hand a government officer. Now that is, in my mind, minimum government and maximum governance. If a citizen really has to get his job done, get his work done, he should not have to visit an office, meet an officer, plead with him, and then if it does not happen, he'll have to escalate it to the minister or the local legislator. In fact, I find it funny, I find it ludicrous in fact, when people say our chief minister has dispensed away or done away with the Praja Darbar, which used to be the case earlier with the earlier chief ministers. I find it ludicrous because why should the chief minister of a state be meeting people on a day-to-day basis when he has such a big administration? You have 31 districts, 31 district collectors, more than 564 odd mandals and mandal level officers, and you have village level functionaries, 29 village level functionaries who are paid by the government, either the local government or the state government or the central government. You have such a huge machinery. You have lakhs and lakhs of employees of government. You have hundreds of legislators, hundreds of government servants, thousands of government servants. Why should the man who's running the state, who should be focused on the big picture, be meeting and conducting a Praja Darbar like he's a monarch or a ruler or an autocrat? This is democracy, and we are sitting in the world's largest democracy. I find it funny when papers write that chief minister should be meeting and conducting these Praja Darbars where people will throng to Hyderabad. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, that would be a classic example of a failed government. If people are rushing to the chief minister to get a pension, to get a chief minister's relief fund, to get the basics met, then there is something seriously wrong with your administration. Then there is something seriously wrong with the local grassroots administration. Then there is something seriously wrong with the way we think. Because if you think centralizing of decision making, centralized power and centralized control is the way to go forward, then I think there is something seriously wrong with our democracy. It's a failed government in my opinion if chief minister has to really start doling out pensions and start doling out taking decisions which could be taken by a mandal level officer or a village level officer. So therefore I find it very, very ridiculous. And the second thing I would say is, a lot of times when we say government, I see our police department, who's doing a fabulous job by the way, Home Secretary is here, who's doing a fabulous job of law and order. But very often, governance is associated with something very visible and tangible. When we see a cop every 100 meters, we feel, okay, this is government. You feel a sense of security. But is that what governance is all about? Is that how we should give our people the confidence that this government is working for you? I don't think so. Governance should be felt. Governance should not be seen or heard. Governance is not about being in your face. Governance is not about suspending a few employees in full public glare, making a tamasha of it. Our governance is not about conducting teleconferences for 7 to 8 hours. Governance is not about review meetings that go on forever, because no meeting will last or will have an impact on the audience if it lasts beyond a couple of hours, because then everybody's a human being and everybody just dozes out or just closes out. And I think most of you know what I'm talking about. Point I'm trying to make is governance is not about being loud. Governance is all about being subtle but effective. Governance is all about making that silent statement, ensuring that you focus on delivery and not just about making that political rhetoric or political noise all the time. Now, a lot of times in India, again, in my limited capacity, in my limited understanding, Sir has far more experience. I'm sure he'll enlighten you on many other facets of government. A lot of times when something goes wrong, the first question that gets asked, in fact, our Honorable Chief Minister alludes to this all the time. The first question that gets asked in our government, especially by the head of the department or your superior, is, who did it? The question should be, what went wrong? Not who did it. Somebody has done it because the process, the system allows you to do it. Now, if you start asking the question, the right question, you'll get the right question. We said, how can we ensure that we can give building permissions within 21 days? If we do not deliver on the 21-day promise, can we call it a deemed approval? So, while it is in its infancy, we are working on streamlining it. We are working on making it better. Our GHMC Commissioner is here, and I also see HMDA Commissioner. All of them are working diligently again to make sure that we give out our building permissions in time. The other thing I also wanted to point out, very often I'm sure in the long career that you will have, the 35 long years that somebody mentioned, you will be faced with plenty of situations. You will get governments which will have varying priorities. You will have leadership that will ask you to do certain things which you may or may not like, which may be and may not be outside the purview of legality. My only suggestion, my only advice, my only piece of advice to you is, of course, don't go beyond the call of your duty. Don't go outside the purview of legality is what I mean. Go beyond the call of your duty, of course, when you have to deliver services to the people. But don't go outside of the purview of legality. But within your limited domain, I can tell you some officers, even after they've relegated their positions, are very, very fondly recollected by the people if they've done good work. I can tell you stories about some collectors and some municipal commissioners who've done stellar work, who are fondly recollected in some of the locations I visit. For example, Shalini Mishra is still talked about in Warangal. A lot of people still fondly recollect the kind of work she's done there. I kept asking people there as to what she's done. They said, Madam Unnappudu roadlu widen chesaru, junctions chesaru. So some good work that gets done, no matter whether the then government recognizes you or not. I think what matters at the end of the day, while you'll not get voted in or voted out based on that, of course, I think what matters is what people think, whether people will appreciate you or not. I think that's important even for a bureaucrat, not just for a politician, to get that appreciation, to get that vote of confidence from the people that you serve. But within your limited capacity, I'm sure you can make a very strong impact. I would ask you to look at this possible mantra that I keep espousing everywhere I go. You could possibly look at this 3D mantra, which will serve you well in your careers as you go forward. I would say the 3D stands for decentralize, digitize, and democratize. Decentralize, Telangana, in fact, is a result of a concerted effort of our Honorable Chief Minister and the people of Telangana, and a resolute fight, of course, of the people of Telangana to self-rule, for self-governance and self-rule. Now, after Telangana has been created, we've also taken the decentralization theme very seriously. We've carved out new districts, new revenue divisional headquarters, new mandal headquarters, and very recently, you also know, new gram panchayats, new tribal tanda panchayats and Gudem panchayats have also been created. Tribal hamlets have also been upgraded into panchayats. So the decentralization that started with the formation of Telangana is now slowly trickled down, all the way down to the gram panchayat. Now, if you are in your limited role also able to decentralize a bit, also able to not wanting to hold on to all the power that you have also, but delegate it to your subordinates and ensure that you actually give them the mandate and trust them to deliver. Digitize. I think digitization and usage of technology is extremely important. I can give you one example of a collector that has done very well again, when I was a legislator in Karimnagar. Now, we've had a situation where our collector then, and subsequent collectors also, it was a simple intervention. what had happened was, typical complaints from people about doctors not showing up at PHCs. Now, all that had to be done was institution of or introduction of surveillance cameras in PHCs. I know Suresh Ji has done surveillance cameras. I think he has a surveillance camera right on top of his head actually, in his own office. If I remember correctly, the last posting that where he was in government, he had a surveillance camera right on top of his head. Point is, if a collector just goes online randomly, ad hoc, and takes a roll call of the employees that are supposed to be present, of the doctors that are supposed to be present, that will bring about a sense of alertness, sense of being on your toes, sense of impermanence, because when you start taking the roll call and saying, okay, where are you and where are you supposed to be, that will bring about a lot of change, and you will see an institutional improvements. And the third thing I would say, democratize. What do I mean democratize? Let me give you this perspective. While we like it or not, in a democracy, when I say the power is shared between the political class and bureaucracy, I mean it. Unless you recognize it, unless you appreciate it. You may not like a particular legislator, you may not like a particular minister, a particular municipal chairman, a particular sarpanch or a ZPTC or an MPP. That should not matter. In a democracy, in a shared power distribution model, your individual likes, your individual affinities, your individual preferences should not and shall not matter. If they do, then you are not doing your job rightly. Because no matter whether you like it or not, when you like him or her or not, people have chosen. When people have chosen, we have no right but to accept people's mandate and respect it. So my request to you is, please focus on this 3D mantra, the decentralize, digitize, and democratize. Now let me just quickly come to the last thought I wanted to share with you. Very often in government, we keep hearing about ease of doing business. You know how Telangana, for the second year in a row, is #1 on the ease of doing business index among all Indian states within India.